All right, what's going on, everybody? So this is going to be our annual now, moving forward. First year that we're doing this, we're going to talk about the college football awards. Unfortunately, the rest of the crew is traveling as we are getting ready to head to the Fantasy Football Expo this weekend. So you've just got Austin, Felix, and myself, for those of you who are not watching live and listening to the podcast. So what we're going to do today is we brought together an award-winning panel, multiple people, and we voted on this. We took this very seriously. A lot of really deep thought went into this, and we're going to talk about multiple awards here. So the Heisman Award, Davey O'Brien, the Doak Walker, the Biletnikoff, the Mackie, the Maxwell, and then we will talk about our fantasy MVP, our fantasy bust, and our Freshman of the Year awards for this. If you guys are watching live, you'll get to see some fancy graphics as we talk about the players that won the consensus for these awards, and you might be seeing these more often throughout the season. But let's start with the Davey O'Brien. Felix considers himself a little bit of a quarterback. He was challenging people openly on Twitter to a quarterback challenge at the Expo. Felix, your O'Brien list was short compared to the rest of them, but you went C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Caleb Williams. I believe you were the only one who had Anthony Richardson on your Davey O'Brien list. So why did you put Richardson on there?
Well, Anthony Richardson was number 50 on Bruce Feldman's freak list. That was way too low, in my opinion. You're talking about a 6'4", 235-pound quarterback who probably is going to run a 4.3, can throw the ball 70 yards. We know what Anthony Richardson can do. He can run. He can be a Cam Newton that can pull away from you. The only question, and he can throw the bullet passes. The only question is whether or not he can process the field, find the right defenders, or the right receivers, read coverages, that sort of thing. If he takes that jump, there is nobody. There is absolutely nobody with a higher ceiling in the country, including C.J. Stroud, including Bryce Young, than one Anthony Richardson. We're not going to call him AR-15 anymore. He doesn't want to go by that name. But that dude is an absolute beast, and I think that we will, in his first season as the starter, see a jump. He's already one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the country. He's one of the most athletic quarterbacks we've seen in some time. Why wouldn't I have him up for this award? It makes sense. The fact that you two did not is just shame on you two. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
I mean, it's just going to be bad, man.
Yeah.
Who is he throwing to? Like, Florida's going to be a bad team. Like, I think there's a lot of factors working against him. It's really difficult to win some of these awards on teams that aren't good. I think if you look at, I mean, not to say what my 5 are, but I think they're all going to be on teams that are better than Florida this year.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I didn't vote Richardson for the Heisman either. Like we've talked about, he definitely has a chance. In my opinion, he's arguably the best athlete in college right now. So I could see him being up for that award, but you're projecting a lot. Heisman's going to go to a team that's likely in the playoff hunt or a good team. And same thing with the Davey O'Brien. Like, it's the quarterback award. I don't really care what he does with his legs. They're going to give it to the guy who's the best passer. You're projecting a lot to say Anthony Richardson's going to jump up to the Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud category in 1 year. Like, maybe next year, if he stays in college, I could see it. But from basically what we saw, very, very small sample size, I get that. But to just say that he's going to jump up into the category of a passer of what we saw out of C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young last year is a little bit insane. Speaking of insane people being picked here as players who have actually never thrown a college pass, Quinn Ewers made it on multiple list here for the Davey O'Brien. Austin, do you think he's got – I know he's not on yours. So why did you not put him on there? Is it fear of the fact that he has not thrown a pass technically on the college level?
It's not fear. I just feel traditionally the Davey O'Brien kind of goes to a pretty established player. And if you think about it, there's a lot of established quarterbacks. You know, we don't love a lot of them for the NFL, but guys like Hendon Hooker, I think Tennessee will be pretty good this year. And I think he'll be at the center of pretty much everything they do offensively. I had him at number 4. The other guys I had on the list, Stroud, Young, Caleb Williams, and Devin Leary. I think NC State has a decent chance to win the ACC. If NC State wins the ACC, it's going to be because Devin Leary was really, really good this year. Like, I think a lot of these awards are more narrative-based than anything else. So obviously, you know, when you're kind of trying to fill out these lists, you kind of have to take that into account, which again is why there was no Anthony Richardson and no Quinn Ewers. But a lot of these guys, I think, Grayson McCall could end up in the top 5 depending on what Coastal Carolina does this year. So that's why I didn't have Ewers on mine.
Yeah, so I did vote for Quinn Ewers, but again, I think I've been pretty open and honest about the fact that I do expect Texas to be a very good team this year. And because of that, it's going to likely be on Quinn Ewers' arm and why I put him up there. Caleb Williams was the only other player besides CJ Stroud who was voted on by everybody to be in the top 5. Felix, you had him, I believe, at 3. What are your thoughts on Caleb Williams this year? Is he a legitimate contender for that award this season?
I mean, I think as a community, we were just so wrong on what Caleb Williams could be as a passer coming out of the tri-state area with that 55% career completion percentage. He is an aggressive downfield thrower. He can make all of the throws. And in his first, he was a true freshman last year. We thought that he was going to be essentially nothing as a passer, and he was way more than that. He's still in Lincoln Riley's system. He gets Jordan Addison and Mario Williams. He's got one of the best wide receiver cores in the country with one of the best play callers. It just makes sense that he be in consideration for this award. I think it's just logical that he will be a finalist, and in 2024, we're looking at a top 5-ish draft pick.
Yeah, I think I'm honestly a little bit surprised that Bryce Young was not picked by everybody. But I do think Caleb Williams was an easy pick to put up on this list because practically every year Lincoln Riley's had his quarterback in the Heisman discussion and therefore also in the Davey O'Brien discussion. So I believe that he should have been up there. So the quarterbacks that were nominated by everybody were Anthony Richardson, Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Devin Leary, Quinn Ewers, and Hendon Hooker. And then Grayson McCall did get 1 vote as well. And the winner by consensus for us to win the Davey O'Brien Award this year was CJ Stroud for the Ohio State Buckeyes. So we have got him winning. He is our pick in the preseason to win the Davey O'Brien Award. Austin, what would you put the odds at that you believe he is going to end up winning that award this season?
It has to be pretty high. I think a lot of the time you don't see repeat winners for a lot of these awards, which I think is why Stroud is a trendy favorite. Because like him and Young, there's Bryce Young. There's not going to be that much separating the two, except for the fact that Young won all this stuff last year. So I think if they have comparable years again, I think voters will kind of tip toward CJ Stroud. Call it voter fatigue or whatever you want to call it. But I definitely think that is an advantage to Stroud. And honestly, I think Stroud will have the better statistical year. Last year he threw for 4,400 yards. He basically missed an entire game and then had that shoulder injury earlier in the year that kind of held him back a little bit. So realistically, I know all these OSU homers out there, he could throw for 5,500 yards, 6,000 yards. He's not going to get anywhere close to that, but I do think, 4,800-ish yards is well within reach here with the wide receivers he has and the offense that he's going to be playing in this Ohio State team that I think is going to be looking to really run up some scores to kind of show that they belong in the playoff this year after missing out on last year. Like, I think there are a lot of things working in Stroud's favor this year. So I actually think, I don't know exactly what the odds would be, but I think he has, if he stays healthy the whole year, at least a 50% chance versus the entire field of winning this award.
Felix, you did vote him 1, even though you were very high on Anthony Richardson. Your thoughts on Stroud winning the Davey O'Brien?
You're muted.
I mentioned Caleb Williams having one of the best wide receiver cores in the country. Well, Ohio State just might have the best. And CJ Stroud as an arm talent. There are some that's why he's my number 1 quarterback over Bryce Young, is that he makes some wow throws in between safeties, over linebackers' heads, in the turkey hole against cover 2. This is somebody who excels in the intermediate and deep parts of the game, hitting those routes. We haven't seen a Ohio State wide quarterback hit at the NFL level, but this is college. And I think CJ Stroud as a college quarterback might be in a tier by himself, to be honest. I know that Bryce Young won the Heisman last year and he's got the athleticism, but if I had to start with a quarterback today and pick amongst the college ranks, I would pick CJ Stroud. I think that he just does everything exceptionally well. And, he could be a runner also, but that's not his game. We have to protect him. But if you protect CJ Stroud, he's going to curve you, cut you up. I don't even know what I'm saying. It was really the Michigan game last year when they played in that snow in the hostile environment. Ryan Day did not change the game plan. They didn't just try to hide their offense. They didn't just try to hand the ball to Trevian Henderson. No, they were throwing that ball in the snow, and they ended up losing. But I just gained a lot of respect for C.J. Stroud the way he lost in a losing effort. But I just thought that he showed a lot in that particular game. So he's my favorite quarterback in the country and my favorite for this award.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about it. I think the Ohio State offense, as Austin mentioned, is going to go out there and try and just pour points on. I would not be surprised if last year we saw Stroud coming out in some games in like the third quarter. I would not be surprised if that's pushed into the fourth quarter. He's out there playing, and then they pull him out in the games that they're winning because I think they want to run those up. I think Ryan Day wants to get CJ Stroud, the Heisman, and the Davey O'Brien. Surprisingly, Bryce Young is still the favorite on odds to win the Davey O'Brien this year, maybe because he was the reigning winner last year, but we all voted. I believe CJ Stroud was number one across the board for everybody. He was, so that was a pretty easy pick for us on the Davey O'Brien. Going to move over to the Doak Walker, which was very interesting in some of the votes here for everybody. And I'm just going to give your vote away here, Felix. You went with Trayvon Henderson, which I think is an interesting pick because he was very good as a freshman last year, but I don't know that he is viewed as like a real finalist for this award. So why did you pick him over some of the other running backs in the country?
I think that he's going to mature in his second year, and he was already very good in his first year, again, being in one of the best offenses in the country. I think that he's going to have open lanes to run through. Remember, Trevian Henderson did not start the season last year as the starter, as I predicted. Mayan Williams did. And he's going to go into this season as the clear starter. I mean, Ohio State is probably going to be playing in a lot of games where, in the fourth quarter, in the second half, they've got a 10-point lead. And do we see Ryan Day turn and give the ball to Trevian Henderson to mature in the player that turns the chains, that gets first downs? Now, they have Mayan Williams there to kind of play that role. But I think that we could see it given more of that opportunity to Trevian Henderson. And, I don't think you can make a mistake when you predict an award, this award, to one of the most explosive players in the country.
He is on odds the third favorite to win behind Texas's Bijan Robinson and Wisconsin's Braylon Allen. Austin, you also voted him first. Any other thoughts on Trevian?
Not really. I just think the reason I didn't pick Bijan, who I still think is the better player, although it's
offensive line,
it's negligible between the two, is that I think they're going to actually take back some of his carries this year. I think they have a pretty stacked backfield. They've said that all offseason, we have all these backs. I think they're going to do what's right by Bijan by not running him into the ground his final year there. I think they're going to want to highlight some other players. And so I think that his workload takes a step back. There's no such incentive for Ohio State with Trayvon Henderson. And to be honest, they don't have anybody else proven there. We really like Evan Pryor that's there. Not really a proven guy there. I kind of like Talon Hayden, who was a true freshman that came in this year. Again, might not even see the field. Mayan Williams is still there, but they showed when they were both healthy last year, they still really preferred to really roll out Trevian. So I think that Trevian is going to have a bigger workload and a better offense. And so I think, again, you just kind of have to start looking at those things to separate some of these guys.
The other reason why I did not vote for Bijan is I don't think that Texas has fixed that offensive line. I still don't think that offensive line is going to be bad. Now, Bijan Robinson was very good despite that bad offensive line last season. But, I think that this game is about consistency through the entire season. And I can see Texas, their offense getting shut down in some games, and Bijan Robinson, quite frankly, being shut down in some games this season. Texas is going to have a first-year quarterback. They're going to have a first-year starter at quarterback. They're going to have a bad offensive line, so that's why I'm going with Trevian Henderson. That's a more well-rounded team in Ohio State.
What you just said?
He finally admitted Quinn Ewers is going to be.
What did you just say?
Whoa.
Okay.
Yeah. So for Bijan, though, he did make everybody's top 5. So we all believe that Bijan is going to end up having a good season, but none of us put him up at 1. What is interesting to me is a lot of people love Braylon Allen. He has been nicknamed Balin Allen by a lot of people. And I honestly thought that he would be, you haven't seen that? It's ridiculous. It's one of the reasons why I fade him completely. I'm obviously kidding. There's a lot of people who love Braylon Allen, and I honestly thought he'd get more than just 1 vote for first place, especially because I've talked about Wisconsin's schedule this year is fairly easy. He should be able to run over all of the competition. Austin, you voted him 5, though. You had him the lowest out of everybody in the votes. Colin Decker was the only one who voted him or gave him a number 1 vote. What are your concerns with Braylon Allen and having him down at 5?
Yeah, I actually regret having him that low. I think I would bump him up a little bit more if the last couple of days as I've thought on it. I honestly would probably, can I give away like what my 1 through 5 were to kind of.
So I'll just say Braylon Allen regrets that you put him that low too, because he probably would have won this award had he just been bumped up 1
Sorry,
spot.
Sorry, Braylon.
But yeah, go ahead. Give us your 5.
Yeah, I had Trevion number 1, Jahmyr Gibbs 2, Bijan 3, Deuce Vaughn 4, and Braylon Allen. I think I would keep the same 5 guys, but I think I would rearrange a little bit. I think I'd probably go Henderson, Allen, maybe. I might have bumped him up to 2, or probably should have bumped up to 2 or 3, because I do think the schedule is pretty easy there for him, and they don't have a lot there again alongside him. Not a lot of depth, so I think that he'll get the majority of the carries, and that passing offense isn't going to be good. If they're going to move the ball at all, it's going to be on the ground.
Felix, you want to give us your top 5 really quick?
I don't even remember what they were, Matthew. So let's see.
All right, I will tell you.
If you filibuster, I will look it up here.
Yeah, I'll give you mine then while we're waiting on Felix. So I voted Deuce Vaughn, number 1. I believe he's going to go out there and have an amazing season. Interestingly enough, he's like one of the worst odds to win it. He was actually bottom 10 they nominate like it feels like 100 players for these awards, and he was like actually bottom 10 in the nominations to get this award, which I found very interesting. I then went Braylon Allen 2, Tank Bigsby 3, Trevion 4, Bijan 5. And the reason I was lower on Trevion than you two is I just think they're going to pass the ball so much that that's going to affect Trevion's workload. Again, I think even when they're up possibly 4 or 5 touchdowns, they're going to come out and continue throwing the ball. And I think Trevion will continue to get some receiving work, but I think it will cut into his carries because based on what happened last year with the concussion and the other rumors of injuries with him toward the end of the season, I think they may use Mayan Williams and Evan Pryor more later in games. So I just think that cuts into Henderson's workload enough that he's not going to be up there toward the top.
Yeah, all right. So my top 5 was Trevion Henderson, who we talked about, Deuce Vaughn, number 2, Braylon Allen, number 3, Jahmyr Gibbs, number 4, and Bijan Robinson, number 5. I think that at the top 3, actually, a lot of us have all of the same guys, just in a different order. These are the most productive running backs in the country. Deuce Vaughn is going to be one of the most productive players from the line of scrimmage in the country. Braylon Allen, same thing. Jahmyr, like the wild card here is how much work does Jahmyr Gibbs get, because he's an Alabama player. He could absolutely go off, especially, they lose JoJo Earl. I didn't even think of this. The person who would be the best slot receiver outside of JoJo Earl is probably Jahmyr Gibbs, if Bill O'Brien is going to use him that way. So he's the wild card as far as productivity. But, I mean, when I look at here and I look at Deuce Vaughn and look at Trevion Henderson and I know who won this award for us, you can't go wrong with either of these two with what they're going to do from that position production-wise.
So one of the other favorites that did not get nominated by anybody was Devon Aching out of Texas A&M. I find that interesting that nobody nominated him. Hey, I'm just saying he's the favorite for the award. So, I'm sorry. I take that back. Colin did nominate him. Good old Colin. He always comes through. A couple of the other players, as Felix just mentioned, Jahmyr Gibbs did get multiple votes. Tavion Thomas got one, as did, who was the last one? I don't remember, but it doesn't matter. The award winner, again, would have actually been different had Austin moved Braylon Allen up after he thought about it. But because he had him down at 5, that gave Deuce Vaughn, the running back, incredibly talented. We talked a lot about him on Devy Debate last night. We have him winning the Doak Walker in 2022. Austin, you talked about thinking he might have a better shot, or I should say better shot, possibly better production at the NFL level over who we just mentioned, Devin Aching. What are your thoughts on him winning the Doak Walker this year?
It could happen. I mean, what did he have? 1,800 total yards from scrimmage or something last year? I mean, he's very, very productive. I think the big sticking point for him, again, is going to be narrative. Does Kansas State win enough games for him to get higher up the list? And I mean, the nice thing for him though is that no matter what, if they're ahead or behind, he's going to get touches. Like if they're losing, they're going to throw him the ball. If they're winning, he's going to run the ball. And they don't have a lot else there behind him. So I do think that he benefits from, like, no matter what the game script is, no matter what the opponent is, he's going to get the ball and he's going to get more touches than anybody else in that offense.
Yeah. And what in 2020 did they upset both Texas and Oklahoma? In 2021, they lost all of their marquee games. So but they could be if they need 2 of those marquee games for him to really be considered. But I think that for the voters of these awards, Deuce Vaughn should be in high regard. So even if they only are bowl eligible 6-6 somewhere in there, I think that he's still a good shot to at least be a finalist.
I mean, he might just kind of get like the how do I want to put this?
Career achievement award,
career
the lifetime achievement
/ like they might just throw him a bone because if Wisconsin wins 11 games and Braylon Allen's amazing, maybe he gets nominated for the Heisman and people kind of vote away from him on this award, or Bijan or Trevian, one of those guys, and where he's kind of just like steady the whole year, and close to the top in a bunch of categories, like he kind of wins it just based on that. I could see that scenario playing out.
Yeah, like for me, when I was doing this, it was very hard for this one. And I'll be honest, the wide receiver, I felt like those were the 2 closest for me. Like I could see 3 or 4 different players winning this. Like quarterback, I really felt like it was down to 2. In my opinion, it was CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. And I don't think that they would give it back to Bryce Young, which is why I went Stroud. I agree with what Felix mentioned earlier about Anthony Richardson. But again, we've got to see it before. And at that point, if he does it, he will win it. But it was very interesting. Todd asked a real quick question on this before we move on to the Biletnikoff. Does Deuce Vaughn stay for 4 years? Is he one of those fringe players that could be enticed by NIL to stay in school? Felix, what do you think?
I don't know how much NIL money there is in Manhattan, Kansas. But yes, I mean, I think that he is. If Deuce Vaughn is going to get a 4th round grade, does he decide to come out or does he stay? I think that there's a potential for him to stay. We're going to find out here very, very soon, what the NFL thinks about him. Because if he is a day 2 guy, which is 1st round draft capital for running backs now, he is going to come out. If he's day 3, if he gets that note that he's going to be a day 3 player, then he might stay for the 4th year. Now, I said that there's not a lot of NIL money in Manhattan, Kansas. But, we've seen Bijan Robinson, some of these nationally known players, they get NIL money from big companies. Is somebody going to do that for, a 5-win Kansas State team and their small running back? Maybe us at campus2can.com. Maybe we can strike up a deal with Deuce Vaughn. We would love that. So to answer Todd's question, I think it's maybe is the best answer that we can give at this point.
Yeah, I think if he gets 4th round draft grade, he's going. I don't think he wants to jeopardize coming back and making that any worse. But it's definitely going to be interesting. I think he will be one of those first players that challenges that NIL discussion that we have had. The Biletnikoff is up next, and this is the only award that was a full sweep. Everybody voted 1 player. So I'm just going to throw it up on the board here, who got it, and then we kind of talk about why we nominated some of the others, and that is JSN. Jackson Smith and Jigba wins the Biletnikoff, or we have voted him to win the Biletnikoff this year. Austin, we talked a lot about him and Kayshon Boutte, right? Like they're the top 2 in this class. For us on the C2C side, most people, Devy as well. You had an interesting list here, though, with JSN, Jordan Addison, Josh Downs, Marvin Mims, and A.T. Perry, who I thought was very interesting. Obviously, before the Sam
Hartman,
yeah.
So that I would like to retract that at this point. But
how close though was it for you between JSN and the four behind him?
I think it's pretty rare for a guy to repeat as a Biletnikoff winner. It's only happened maybe 2 or 3 times. It's pretty rare. So while Addison could do it in a pass-heavy offense at USC, I kind of am skeptical because there's a pretty hefty amount of wide receiver talent. JSN he's going to be the wide receiver one there at Ohio State. And if you think that they're volume-wise going to be amongst some of the most prolific passing offenses in the country this year, then it makes sense to kind of think that wide receiver one in that offense could do it. Just for the record, I don't think this was a clean sweep, by the way, unless I'm just misreading this. I think somebody that's actually on the panel here tonight had Josh Downs winning it, which I don't think is a bad guess. I mean, I have him as my third guy. I think that he'll be the go-to guy at North Carolina, and they'll probably throw the ball a lot this year. So, but I felt pretty good about JSN over the other guys on that list.
Yes, you are correct. I did not see Felix's vote as he went with Josh Downs. So why Josh Downs over Jackson Smith-Njigba?
I mean, if it's not going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba as the most productive wide receiver in the country, I have to take Josh Downs, who was uber productive last year. UNC is going to have a first-time starting quarterback. Josh Downs is going to be there in the slot. If you are a first-time starting quarterback, who are you going to throw the ball to every time you drop back? I think it's going to be Josh Downs, who, in my opinion, is a spitting image of Tyler Lockett. So I just think that offense is going to revolve him deep in the screen game. I mean, they're going to get him the ball in every single way possible. And I think Josh Downs is a first-round draft pick. I mean, I know we're not talking about NFL draft status right here, but I think that he is a end of the first round type pick, especially after he tests. If he does anything like what he did coming out of high school, if he's improved on those numbers, he's going to be a first-round draft pick, and I think that he will. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to be uber productive, the center of the offense for a Phil Longo slot wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like the pick. He made the list for a bunch of us. I think one of the only ones who didn't vote for him was Colin, but he had his guy Jermaine Burton in there, which I think is also a very good pick. And then Alfred did not have him in there either. He also went Burton, which again I think is a good pick with him going to Alabama. We've seen them kind of pumping him up over the last couple of days. Keyshawn Boutte, Xavier Worthy, and JSN are the current favorites right now to win the award. I believe they all made all of our list. The best of the rest, Quentin Johnston, A.T. Perry, who again, obviously this was put out before the Sam Hartman news, which Austin was actually the only one who had A.T. Perry on there. But one that nobody had on there, I just want to get your thoughts really quick, Austin, was Nathaniel Tank Dell out of Houston. He is listed on here actually above Josh Downs in odds to win the Biletnikoff. Your thoughts on him and why nobody put him on their list?
I think that, first off, not a lot of G5 guys have actually ever won this award. I have the list up here in front of me, and like of the past, I'm trying to go back to find the last. Louisiana Tech, Troy Edwards, 98. It's the last G5 guy to win it. It just doesn't happen particularly often. I think that Golden's going to siphon off just enough of that work where it's going to kind of hurt him in the lot. Because you either got to be like on this uber prolific offense, or it just has to be like a total funnel. And I'm not sure that he quite fits either of those categories, which is why I chose the guys that I chose. I do think that Marvin Mims could actually be a sleeper, depending on how much Oklahoma throws the ball this year. And what else do they have at wide receiver? Like we've all talked about that all offseason. They have, Jaleel Farouk might start for them. They've got a bunch of freshmen, Jaden Gibson, Nick Anderson. They've got Theo Weiss, who I think we've seen enough of by now to know that he's probably if not going to siphon off meaningful work. So I do think that Mims has an outside chance of doing it as well.
I like that. So my 5, go ahead, Felix.
I do want to highlight the CFF guide here. Jeff Lebby is the offensive coordinator now at Oklahoma. You think of Lane Kiffin and RPO passing scheme, but according to the CFF guide, I believe they'll actually only pass at a 47% rate. I mean, so they're running those RPOs and actually handing the ball off quite a bit. So, but when they do throw the ball, could it go to Marvin Mims? Absolutely. But I just wanted to highlight the CFF guides that you can get at campuscan.com right now for just $20. Get ready for the college season.
So my list, and I'll get your two really quick before we move on to the Mackie Award, was JSN, Addison, Butte, Worthy, and then Downs. I liked all of them. For me, it was a little bit close, but again, we just talked about earlier with CJ Stroud. We have winning the Davey O'Brien. I expect him to throw the ball a lot. While I do think Marvin Harrison could have a really good year, and I even mentioned last night, possibly outproduce JSN. I think with what he did last year, he's going to be the big favorite going in, and unless he just completely disappoints, I would be surprised if he doesn't win this. Austin, what was your top five? Or did you already give yours?
We already gave mine, but I just want to say real quick that I think Keishon Butte has a 0% chance to win this award this year. Coming back off the injury, I don't think this offense is going to be super pass heavy. I don't think this offense is going to be particularly good. And if LSU is a poor team, like I think they might be, I don't know that Butte plays the whole year. Exactly. So yeah, exactly. I think there's virtually a 0% chance that Butte wins this award. Yeah.
Interesting. He's got the third best odds right now.
I love the kid. Well, yeah, because he's like, I still think he's the best wide receiver in college football, but that doesn't just because everyone thinks you're the best. If you don't put up that 1,700 yard season, you ain't winning it, or 1,500, whatever you got to hit.
All right, so the Mackie Award. I love how Felix only voted like one or two players on every single list too, and like everybody else knows. Five. It made
he ran out of players after 2 or 3.
That's a good point. Good point. All right, so we'll start with you then, Felix. It'll go fairly quick. You only have 2 players listed on here for your Mackie Award winner. Give us your top 2 and why you voted them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know who the best tight ends in college football are, and that's Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. Now, why did I pick one over the other? I think there's a chance that Notre Dame is like terrible in the passing game and that Michael Mayer is actually asked to just block way more. And let's see, Stetson Bennett is what, a 5th, 6th, 7th year player. So he is a veteran. He's going to be able to find Brock Bowers again, who is he's going to lead Georgia in receiving again. I love Michael Mayer as my number 1 tight end, my number 1 NFL tight end, but I don't think that his season is going to be as productive as in years past. Tyler Buckner is rather short, throwing over the middle. I think that Tyler Buckner is going to be running a lot. I think he's going to be scrambling a lot. And I think Michael Mayer might be doing more pass blocking. So I like Notre Dame's offensive line and their run game and their read option game. And I do like Lorenzo Styles as being the deep slot option, but I can see Lorenzo Styles having fewer catches for a higher average being the deep threat there. And I just think that Michael Mayer is going to be less consistent than he has been in recent seasons. And so I've got Brock Bowers number 1. He's my Mackie Award winner.
Austin, give us your list.
So I had Mayer at number 1, and just Mayer is going to win a Lifetime Achievement Award. There's like almost zero doubt in my mind. I'd put a decent chunk of change on this if I was allowed to bet on this stuff in my state. Come on, Pennsylvania, get your shit together. Behind him, I actually have Zach Kuntz second before Freaklist. I just think he's going to be very, very productive. And they haven't been afraid to give this award to lesser conference guys. Harrison Bryant won it a couple years ago, and Trey McBride won it last year. So G5 guys can win this one. I have Michael Trigg third. I think he's just going to be so productive that it's going to be hard to keep him off this list. Joshua Simon, same thing at Western Kentucky. I expect a big year at Joshua Simon. I know our CFF guys are kind of split on it here at C2C. But I do expect a really big year out of him. I think that offense can support basically 2.5 receivers, and he fits somewhere in that 2.5. And then Ben Urasek at Stanford. Who else are they going to throw to at Stanford, guys? I know they have like John Humphreys and
your boy Elijah
Higgins. They're fine, but I think the majority of the time they're going to be throwing it to
Elijah Higgins is on the freak list. I don't know where he was, but I was like, huh.
He's like Troy O'Meary, basically. Like he's 6'4", 225 or whatever. Yeah, that's the kind of player he is. But I think Urasek is gonna he might be their leading receiver. I don't remember if he was last year or not, but if he wasn't, it was close.
So my list, I had Michael Mayer at 1 as well. I went Trigg 2, Bowers 3, and then I went Kuntz 4th. For me, Bowers, I don't know that Georgia's offense is going to be as effective as it was last season. And I do think with Eric Gilbert coming in there, as long as he's on the field, I think he could take some of that work away from Bowers as well. I don't expect him to be that good. And I do agree with Austin on Mayer, and it was actually very close with him and Bowers. The fact that two people had Bowers down at 4 and 3 is what dropped him just slightly below Mayer, who we have winning the John Mackie Award. And I do kind of agree with what Austin said as well. Like, he's been considered the best tight end for the past couple of years in college. I think he's kind of like the easy vote to win this award. I do think he deserves it. Brock Bowers probably wins it next year because of the conversation we're having right now. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's just kind of the route that it goes. So it's going to be very interesting between all of those guys. These next two is going to be very interesting. The Maxwell Award and the Heisman. There was some very serious contention on the Heisman Award here, but we're going to talk about the Maxwell Award first. Felix, you only voted one player. Who did you vote and why? You are muted, good sir.
3 times.
I think that this player is going to win both. He wasn't a finalist last year. I think that the Heisman trust the voters. They kind of exposed themselves last year. I don't care if Will Anderson has like 8 sacks this year. He should win the Heisman and the Maxwell. He is the best player in college football. And I've never been more upset about this type of award, a defensive player not winning, other than when Ndamukong Suh didn't win and Mark Ingram won the Heisman. Ndamukong Suh was the best player in college football at that season. I think that was like 2009. And Will Anderson was the best player in college football last year. This is not an offensive award. It is who is the best player in college football. There's not a debate. It is Will Anderson. He is the best player in college football. So, I mean, Chris Moxley has talked about the odds on this award. I don't even know anything about betting, but there were good odds. Will Anderson is going to be a finalist. I think that he's going to win the Heisman Trophy, even if he doesn't have, 15 sacks, even if he puts up between 8 and 10 sacks. He's the most disruptive player in college football. Go back and watch Kyle Pitts getting dump trucked in the backfield by a freshman, Will Anderson. That's the first time I came across him. I was like, what's this? Will Anderson, Heisman Trophy winner. Will Anderson, Maxwell Award winner.
Go ahead.
For what it's worth, I'm not sure it's consensus that he is the best even defensive player in college football, and I would not agree. Like, I think he is, but I see a lot of people hype up Jalen Carter from Georgia. I think Anderson I voted for Anderson as well for this award, and I think it's because the voters don't have the balls to give him the Heisman. So this will kind of be, the consolation prize for him, especially if Bama is playoff bound and whatever else wins the SEC this year. That I think he'll win this award. So I put him first, and then I put Stroud second, and those are the only 2 guys I put down because I think those are the only 2 that are really going to be in contention for this year. And again, we had Stroud, as probably being the best quarterback in the country, so he's always going to factor in at some point.
Yeah, those were my top 2. They were practically the top 2 for everybody but Alfred, who did vote Will Anderson 1, but he went Caleb Williams 2nd and had Stroud 5th. The only person that did actually not vote Will Anderson 1 was Chris Moxley. He went with CJ Stroud, which did give Will Anderson the Maxwell Award. And I do agree with what Austin said, even though, as Felix mentioned, he voted for Will Anderson as the Heisman Award winner, as did I. I do think that this is likely what ends up happening is that they give Will Anderson the Maxwell Award because they don't have the balls to give him the Heisman. So that takes us to, they say, the most prestigious award in college football. I think it's literally become a quarterback award outside of Devonta Smith winning it here lately, and that is the Heisman. Felix, we know you voted Will Anderson, as did I. Just to give the top 5 here for Felix was Will Anderson, CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson. I went Will Anderson, Stroud, JSN, Bryce Young, and of course, Quinn Ewers. Austin, what was your 5?
For me, Stroud 1, Anderson 2nd, Bryce Young 3rd, JSN 4th, and I put Caleb Williams 5th because I think if USC, they have a very soft schedule. If USC wins 9 or 10 games, I think Caleb Williams will get some sort of recognition for that. But I do think Stroud, best quarterback in the country, it's going to be his for the taking. I just think we're trying to predict what's going to happen, not necessarily what should happen. And so CJ Stroud is probably going to win this award.
I do think it's likely going to be a 2-horse race between those two. I think Bryce Young is going to get there, but again, I think because they don't want to have a repeat Heisman Award winner, they won't give it to him. I loved Felix's reaction when he found out I had Quinn Ewers in my top 5. What brought Will Anderson only lost out in this vote. CJ Stroud was the award winner for us. We voted him the Heisman Award winner. The only reason he actually lost out to Will Anderson was by 0.2 points, and that was because Alfred put Will Anderson at 4. Had Will Anderson just bumped him up 1, it would have actually been a tie between the two, and I would have just made it Will Anderson just for the hell of it. But CJ Stroud just barely wins out there. So that is our awards. I'm going to post them all here again, going from supposedly most important down to the bottom here. So we had CJ Stroud winning the Heisman Award in 2022. We have Will Anderson coming away with the Maxwell Award. We have I almost said John Mayer again. Michael Mayer getting the Mackie Award here. JSN getting the Biletnikoff. Deuce Vaughn getting the Doak Walker. And CJ Stroud also coming home with the Davey O'Brien Award. A couple really quick ones that we just voted on. We did not do graphics for. Yeah, go ahead, Austin.
I just want to say real quick, the one thing that I do think Will Anderson has on it going for him, kind of like how we talk about for a G5 team to make the playoff, they have to be really good 2 years in a row. Will Anderson is on the national radar 2 years in a row. So I think that does help him out a lot as opposed to some of these other guys that the defensive guys that maybe have like that one big year, whereas he like can point to basically 2 years of production if he kind of repeats it and say, look, like he's done this for 26 straight games or 28 straight games or whatever. Like at some point, maybe you have to factor that in. So I do think that will come into play. And if Ohio State trips up a little bit, then and Alabama is clearly the number 1 team in the country, then I do think Anderson wins it over Young because Young won it last year and Anderson will have had 2 really big years. So I do think there is some logic in there for him winning it.
So what you said right there is why I actually voted Will Anderson. I talked about this. Moxley, myself, and Brandon Sanders did a bold take episode of Devy Debate a couple weeks ago, and I do think Ohio State loses a game at some point in time this season. I think there's a shot that Alabama does go undefeated, which then gives Will Anderson the Heisman.
Weren't you picking Texas to maybe knock them off on Quinn Ewers' gold?
God, no! I actually was DMing someone recently saying that Will Anderson is likely going to just absolutely eat in that.
He's just going to walk out with Quinn Ewers' head in his hand.
It's going to be bad. Yeah. Like I'm really hoping Quinn maybe gets a little injury in the back and they throw Hudson Card out there to just feed him to the Sharks for a game because it's going to be bad. And no, I'm really not a big John Mayer fan, but I don't know why that name just keeps popping up in my head there, Todd. I don't know. So. We also did really quick a freshman of the year, fantasy MVP, and fantasy bust. I'll just let you guys give your list and then tell us why you picked the player that you did. Felix, will come to you first. Your fantasy MVP.
My fantasy MVP is Anthony Richardson for a lot of the reasons I stated earlier. But when it comes to fantasy, could Anthony Richardson lead the Gators in rushing touchdowns? Could he have 15, 20-ish rushing touchdowns? Yeah, he could. Could he add another 20 through the air? Yeah. I mean, we're talking about I think his floor could be like 28-ish points a game from the quarterback position. And he could have – listen, if all things go right, Anthony Richardson is going to have some of these games where he scores 55, 60 points and just, is especially in super flex formats is really a boon for you. So I got all my chips in on Anthony Richardson. So why not make him the fantasy MVP?
I mean, he made my top 5 as well. I'm with you. Again, my big fear is just that Florida might be so bad that it also hurts his production a little bit. And so I dropped him down my list a little bit. I ended up going with Deuce Vaughn, who we had winning the Doak Walker, because I just think what he's going to do rushing and everything receiving as well is likely going to make him one of the highest scoring fantasy players this season. I put JSN up there and Stroud because I think those two will probably go nuclear for the most part. And then A-Rich came in there at 4 for me because, again, I really do think he's got a shot to do exactly what Felix said. I wouldn't be surprised if he has multiple Malik Cunningham type weeks that we saw him do in the finals last year. But then I'm really worried there's going to be some weeks where he's only getting you like 10 or 11 points because Florida just has a chance to be so bad on offense, especially with the injuries they've now suffered at wide receiver and nobody really standing out to help out Richardson. Austin, what was your 5 and who did you pick to be your fantasy MVP?
Yeah, so I kind of, just to give a small look at my thought process here. So I was trying to mostly pick out guys that weren't going like right away in drafts. Like you're going to get like premier value out of them as well. Like if you take Trayvon Henderson at the 101 and he leads the non-quarterback positions in scoring, like, yeah, you made a good pick, but like, was there like the value, like that's kind of what you expect out of the 101. So the names that I put down here from 1 to 5, I did put Deuce Vaughn number 1. He is the one guy that's going top 5, 6, whatever in regular college fantasy drafts. But just another 1,800-ish yards season, I think is pretty much guaranteed as long as he doesn't get injured. He will be that entire offense. Number 2, Michael Trigg, because I think, again, there is a chance that he is the leading producing tight end in the country. And before Jalen Robinson arrived there at Ole Miss, I thought that he could lead that entire team in receiving. I'm kind of skeptical he can do that now with Robinson there. But I think that he's going to return a lot of value. He still goes behind in most of these drafts, from what I've heard, Bowers and Mayer. And I think he's going to outscore both of them fairly easily this year. Number 3, Caleb Williams. I think that he has a pretty strong chance of being the QB1. USC's defense is so atrocious that they're just going to have to basically put the ball in his hands every game and kind of say, go win us this game. And that a lot of times is going to involve scoring 45 points. Like, I just think that's the nature of what USC is going to be this year. Number 4, I put Clay Millen. Remember what Carson Strong has done the past couple years. I think I expect a very similar type performance from him. He sat in this offense last year and learned it. So it's not like this is all new to him. He's got some really nice weapons in a conference that isn't particularly strong. I think that he goes very late. Like, there's not a lot of rushing upside, but I do think that of all these kind of pass-only quarterbacks, he has a chance to be one of the better, if not the most prolific one in all of college football this year. And then 5th, I put Kaden Prather, who's going really late. I think a lot of guys project him to be the 2nd leading wide receiver there. But if you look at Graham Harrell's offenses at USC, the leading guy and even the 2nd guy there has put up 100 catches, like 1,300 yards and a decent amount of touchdowns. So if that offense can get clicking, whether that's through JT Daniels, he manages to somehow stay healthy for the whole year, whether that means I think whatever quarterback's in there, they'll be prolific. And I think that Prather, if he's the 2nd guy, really good. If he's the 1st guy, I think there's a chance for a 85, 1,108 season. And based on where he's going in drafts right now, that would be the value of the values this year. So I do think that Prather is not getting enough love there. And I've definitely been talked into him by Nate Marquise on our CFF team. And to a lesser extent, because I'll never give him credit for anything, Mike Valerie, one of our Devy guys.
Yeah, I was going to say Mike Valerie's standing at attention right now. And I don't mean standing up at attention once you mentioned Kaden Prather, because he loves him some Kaden Prather. You don't get the joke, Felix? No.
He doesn't approve of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Poor taste by the host here, and I apologize. All right, our fantasy bust. I only listed 3. I went with Sean Tucker, Tyler Van Dyke, and Quentin Johnson, all players that are being drafted very highly that I just don't think produce the way people are expecting them to where they drafted them. Sean Tucker is being drafted very highly. I would not be surprised if he takes, I won't say a massive step back, but a decent step back this year. I don't see him necessarily getting this day 2 draft capital like some other people do, which then also decreases his value moving on to the NFL side of things. I don't think he's going to have a top 12, 24 running back season for fantasy football. So I dropped him on there. We know why Tyler Van Dyke, he's also on Felix's list, so I'll let him talk about that. And then Johnson is more of just a fear of, I love Johnson, but there's just so much to project there. And I believe he's being drafted as like a top 5 or 6 wide receiver in most drafts because of Sonny Dykes. And I think there's a realistic shot that he does not produce that value at all this season. Felix, I will give you a ton of credit on this because you love you some Tyler Van Dyke, but you have him as your number 1 fantasy bust. Why?
And I do want to say regarding fantasy MVP, Austin, I also picked Tay McWilliams, who for the same reason, as far as value, Tay McWilliams, I think, can be an RB1, and he is not being drafted that way. Tay McWilliams at Baylor, the projected starter there. Fantasy bust. Jim Harbaugh is toxic for fantasy value, and Jim Harbaugh is essentially the offensive coordinator at Miami. Now, it's one of his offensive coordinator from last season, that being Josh Gaddis. I think Josh Gaddis is going to run 2 tight ends and run, probably Jalen Knighton and Trevante Citizen into the back of that line to 30 times a game. I think that's just how they play. That's how Michigan plays. We have to remember. Gaddis was like choice 4 for Mario Cristobal, or at least being associated with that job. There was, and I always forget his name, the passing game coordinator for the 2019 LSU Tigers. He was associated with that. Joe Brady was associated with that position, and there was like 1 or 2 other names other than Brady, and before it was Gaddis. They don't have Mike Harley and Charleston Rambo. They don't really have somebody who's going to take the top off the defense. They have 2 good tight ends who should, quite frankly, lead that team in receiving, in Will Mallory and Elijah Arroyo. And then they have an offensive coordinator who's going to run the ball. And then their head coach is a defensive-minded guy. This is going to be a super conservative offense, in my opinion. And I love Tyler Van Dyke. I was the one who was saying he was the next Joe Burrow last year. Lo and behold, he did not have to transfer. But they're not going to play the same way. As a matter of fact, they're going to play the complete opposite way that they played last year with Rhett Lashley. This is no longer a bombs away offense. Sorry. And so Tyler Van Dyke is my number 1. Just go through the rest of my list. I've got Jackson Dart, number 2, who, like Quinn Ewers, has not secured the starting position for his team. And it sounds like Luke Altmaier at Ole Miss might be ahead of Jackson Dart at this point. I've got Tyler Buckner, number 3. Now, I like Tyler Buckner as a developmental player. However, I do not think that he has arm talent, like kind of whatsoever. And he's a player who actually changed his throwing motion in the middle of college to kind of, or middle of high school, to try to correct some things and get some more velocity on his throws. I don't think that he has it. So he's going to be an athletic player. But as far as passing the ball, I think that Notre Dame might be one of these teams that you can kind of crowd the line of scrimmage and try to play the run. So I have him there. And then I have Michael Mayer there for the same reason. I think that Michael Mayer is going to be doing a lot of blocking. I think that Tyler Buckner and Chris Tyree, I think they're going to be running a whole lot of read option. This is going to be a heavy that would be the strength of this particular team. So I've got Tyler Buckner and Michael Mayer as number 3 and 4. I didn't put a 5.
Austin, who did you pick as your fantasy bust?
I was trying to put names that were different for these fantasy positions, which is why, also on my last one, I had Millen, I had Prather, I had some guys that maybe nobody else had on their list. So I tried to put some different names on mine here. Number 1, I put Quentin Johnston. I love Quentin Johnston, and I think we all love the idea of Quentin Johnston, which I think is kind of what Felix was talking about a little bit with Tyler Buckner. But who's Quentin Johnston's quarterback going to be this year? Hint. Probably the same guys that were throwing it to him last year when he had like 33 catches. Like, I know the system is going to be improved, but I'm skeptical that it improves enough to vault him into top tier wide receiver 1 status, which is where I think a lot of people expect him to finish this year. So I think he's going to be disappointing. And then I do have Brendan Armstrong, number 2. A new offensive coordinator. I don't think that he's going to have quite the rushing production this year. I think he's going to stay in the pocket a little bit more. think that offense as a whole might be a bit of a downgrade this year. So I'm fading both of those guys for pure fantasy this year.
Before we give our Freshman of the Year awards, for those of you still watching, I'll make sure to mention this at the beginning of the podcast as well. Major shout out to Hannah Page, our creative lead, who created those incredibly beautiful graphics there. And again, you guys may be seeing those more throughout the season, so pay attention to those. Freshman of the Year. Found this one to be very interesting. I really thought it would be kind of 2 to maybe 3 guys listed for everybody, but it was a little bit different for everybody listed here. I'm going to read some of the other votes for the guys who are not here. Alfred had Nicholas Singleton, Cade Klubnik, Matthew Golden, Talon Chetron, Damian Martinez. Colin Decker had Luther Burton, Damian Martinez, Matthew Golden, Cartavius Norton, and Jordan Hudson. Austin, who did you pick to be the Freshman of the Year?
Yeah, I really wanted Norton on mine. He comes in at 2. I'll maintain. I think he takes that job pretty early in the year here at Iowa State. Kind of is the next really good Iowa State running back. I'll go 2 through 5, and then I'll reveal my number 1. Matthew Golden was at 3. You guys both voted for Golden, so I'll let you guys talk about him. I did put Andre Green at 4, and I wouldn't have if that Antoine Green news hadn't broken, where he's going to be out for 8 to 10 weeks. There's nothing in front of him now. Like, I think they were going to kind of make him earn it over the course of the year, but there's just nothing in his way. Like, they have to play him, and they're going to throw the ball a ton. Josh Downs is obviously going to get his, but I do think Green has a decent year. And then I put Luther Burden 5 because I do think he'll probably be the de facto number 1 at Missouri. But number 1 for me is Talon Chetron. I've said this for months now that I think he ends up wide receiver 1 there pretty early in the year. By week 4 or week 5, he's going to be the guy. Oklahoma State kind of figures it out as the year goes on. Like, Tay Martin was not the guy week 1 last year. They kind of figured that. Chetron was, by all reports, the best guy at camp. He's the most athletic guy. He's basically Jaden Bray, but like 20% more athletic, which is the guy that he's going to take this job from. They're both going to start. But I think Chetron, it would not shock me if he gets close to 1,000 yards this year, because by week 4, week 5, he's going to just be the target in that offense. We know Spencer Sanders can support that guy. So I think Talon Chetron is going to be very fantasy relevant this year and moving forward. And I do think that he will be the top freshman offensively at the skill positions in college football this year.
Yeah, I picked players who are already projected to be starters from day one. So Matthew Golden is, as a matter of fact, this is very easy for me. Matthew Golden, I had number 1. Cartavius Norton, who Phil Steele has projected to be the starter, and Austin, you've touted him from the beginning, at number 2. And I have Evan Stewart, the wide receiver at Texas A&M, number 3. All of these players are going to game 1, day 1, either be starters or have significant roles in their offenses. I think Stewart is a starter, Golden is a starter. The only one that's kind of a question is Norton, getting the first carries there for Iowa State, or is it Jarrell Brock? But we project that Norton is going to be that guy. So I did not think that this was very difficult, one of the more difficult awards. They don't have Singleton there because they've got Kayvon Lee there. They've got Katron Allen there. I think that they could ease Nicholas Singleton into that role just like they did with Trevian Henderson last year. I don't think Cade Klubnik is starting before week 5, 6, if everything goes wrong there. So I heard his name. So these 3 are all already starters, and I'm glad that I have them rostered in a lot of places. So that was kind of the logic and process behind my selections for this particular award, is who are the guys that have already locked up playing time early in the season.
If I would have stuck to my guns, I should have gone with Luther Burton. I've claimed that he's going to break records this year as a freshman at Missouri, but I ended up picking Matthew Golden as well because I just expect that offense to be really good. I've said I think Houston could be legitimately in the talks for the playoffs all season long this year. They have a very winnable schedule. They've got Texas Tech week 2, I believe. Outside of that, they've got a schedule that they should go undefeated. And I think because of that, Matthew Golden's going to put up incredible numbers. I did also kind of take like my thought process was very much close to what you had, Felix. It's like, I'm just going to go with guys I think are going to be starting and productive this year. I thought about Evan Stewart, but again, I've said many times, as much as I think Jimbo Fisher is going to throw the ball more, I kind of want to see it just to make sure that he actually does it. Golden just seemed to be the one who like stood out as like, he's, I think, going to get the ball. He's going to be fed the ball at times, and that offense is going to produce. I'd love for Burden to be that guy because, like I said, I do have a hot take out that he's going to have the most receiving yards of freshman for Missouri, but I think Golden's the more logical choice. So that is why I went with him. So that is it. That is all of our awards. We are going to do this every single year, and we will be announcing awards every week as well. We'll save those for when we get into season, but that was something that Felix has really made a push for this season, and we are going to do. Again, you might see those graphics more often. If you guys are going to be in or near Canton, Ohio this weekend, come say hi to all of us as we will be at the Fantasy Football Expo. Outside of that, this is the last summit for this year, so I hope you guys really enjoyed them. This will be an annual thing, and we'll be back with all of our regular scheduled programming next week. We'll talk to you guys again